No problem. I fell asleep and watched the show. Those are dudes.
Okay.
All right. Good to see you guys. And as we get started today, visiting with the team some, the second season begins today, and there's a good energy that goes with that. And use it and also normalize that good energy. And that goes the focus into execution, into improvement, into the game plan. And so we'll throw a great week of preparation. Tampa's really strong in a number of areas, and it'll definitely take the whole week to get ready. And so all that said, let's get rocking with you guys.
Before we get there, can you give a little injury update on like what you expect like guys like Marshawn and Tyler to do?
We have a couple guys that are on some vet rest days, but after that, everybody's involved to some level today, so that's a good thing, all hands on deck. So we had some vet rest days of Zach, Cleland, Dante, and Terry.
And then, you talked a lot about culture in the building and all that. When did you really start to see that shift into the way that you wanted it to be? Like, when was that, at what point in the season?
Yeah, because I don't want to get play style mixed into that as well. Going to Arizona and staying there, I thought that was a step in the right direction, John. We were still really new as a group together. And so I thought spending a whole week, we went out to Cincinnati and then out to Arizona to stay there. That was, I'd say, a step in the right direction. Going through adversity is also a part of that journey, because if you have standards about how you do things together, then you have to live those on the best of days and the hardest of days. And so creating a standard together was an important part of creating a culture, because it's how we do our business together. And so many times I've separated like atmosphere and culture. We've got a good vibe about how we do things, but that's not your culture. It's how you practice, how you meet, how you do things together. And so that doesn't happen overnight, but it does take time with people doing it together. And so I would say that's probably the first steps that I saw. Good wins, did you react the same? Tough losses, were you able to come back and stand in that space? So after our third loss, to come back, knowing that many others would have said, hey, why don't you just, see what happens and where it goes? We did the opposite of that. And we stepped right into improvement and getting better, and that's what our culture is about. And so I thought that was probably when I knew that they were headed in the right direction, handling the difficult times, knowing there's more work to do and going for it.
What tangible things did you see during that week in Arizona that pays off? Like, is there anything you remember from that time that like really jumps out that this is a sign of what could happen?
Doug had shared a good story with me. He said, Dan, I saw something I hadn't seen in a while. They said there wasn't no meeting going on, and there was just a lot of guys hanging out together, whether that was in the meal room and it was, when we were done for the evening. I saw the quarterbacks, they were just in office, away from me, of going through things together. And so coaches, players, and so enjoying spending time together, I think, is a big deal. And somebody said that when we had the holiday party here, it was less like a office party and more like getting together with your friends.
I get that practice week for you guys should be relatively the same, but in terms of during the regular season, I imagine it's hard to like completely change what you're doing, perhaps to adjust to the opponent, because you have to do what you have to do. But when in the playoffs and the one and done, does that change the approach? Is it I'm not saying throw like the kitchen sink in there, but like, is it more of like, hey, we have to do different things a little bit in our process because it's just this one game, one opponent?
No, in fact, just the opposite, Ben, to where I went into practice, into the first meeting Monday, saying exactly what you had thought. Let's change some things up. I thought we'd really, maybe we'll practice at night this week, and they just kind of looked at me, head tilted. I said, no, man, I'm just bullshitting. We're going to do exactly what we do. I said, I've been saying this for 17 weeks. It's a process of winning that you go through to get ourselves ready, and we have to work really hard to get ourselves ready. But the process of that, which I wanted them to feel, should feel exactly the same. I recognize, there's energy that goes with that. And that's a good thing, like coming back from a long flight and that on Monday, like there was energy in the workouts and stuff to go. And so use that, have it as a balance, but also knowing that it's there. And so it is a little bit of a turbo boost that you get this time of year, and you should use it to your advantage.
And obviously you have veterans on the team who've been in these situations. That's part of the reason you got them here. But you also have had so many alumni come back over the course of the year, including some of the quarterbacks that have won Super Bowls here. How much do you think any of that, or do you point back to any of that, or how much do you think any of that will resonate, say, for Jaden or some of the young guys about, hey, this is something that happened here before, and we're taking the steps right now to go do it ourselves? We
don't talk about in that way during this time. We recognize, that excellence that's taken place here in the past, but we don't try to carry any of that with us into the game. It's just this game, man. And so the guys don't have to, worry about things from years back or months back. It's just the focus into this week. And then those are great topics and discussions for the postseason. But as it applies to this game, there's plenty of looks and things to get ready for, for this game specifically.
Dan, obviously, this is year one of this program. And so in a lot of ways, this is a beginning for what you're starting here. But is there a way to impart how valuable these opportunities are, that you can have good seasons, you don't make the playoffs?
Sure.
That this is an opportunity. It
is, and that's really the way that we look at it. And I can recognize that maybe externally there weren't expectations. That's understandable. I think when I got here, I never used the word rebuild. I thought there was a recalibration that would take place. But it is all hands on deck, when you get to these moments. And I wanted that moment to feel these guys have earned that right to go battle for it. And when you get into a tournament setting, you want to be really ready. So that's why I was pumped to have, the guys being able to, get into practice and get the work that we need today. But I haven't looked too far ahead or behind with the group, man, and just saying, like, this is, our time to go play like we are capable of. And we're going to play well this weekend. And that's something we've been digging in to go for. And, the preparation, the mindset, like, we're ready to go fight. And this is an excellent team that we're going against.
Hi.
Hello.
The pledge that players wrote for the standard going into the season, was that something they wanted to do on their own? Was it a suggestion you made to them? How did that come
it was
together?
A suggestion for me.
Okay.
And I thought, as we're going through things together, I wanted them to be part of how we would do our business together. Because if they're not living it, Nikki, then it's really not a standard. So it's one thing for a coach or somebody, these are all the rules and you have to follow them, compared to this is how we're going to do business together. The preparation, mindsets, of things that you want to do together. And so I wanted them to know, and I intentionally backed away some, because I didn't want to do like, and add this to it and add this to it. So I wanted them to have to write it, and then I could give them some feedback on it. But it was definitely their words.
And it was the whole team, or
yes, not any of the rookies.
Okay.
We did it the weekend prior. I think it was the weekend prior to them getting here. We thought it was important to have some standards set prior to those maybe 25 guys at the time coming here, and so they could ask these older players, this is how we're going to do business. This is the way that we do our language. This is the way that we train. And so they didn't have that. So it was, I guess, probably somewhere, in the 50s to 60 guy neighborhood. And then as the rookies came, we were able to articulate that to them.
A completely different topic. Jaden, obviously. In the time you've been around him, what makes him so good at compartmentalizing to when he doesn't get flustered in tight moments?
There's an X factor that he has, and compartmentalizing, it's an accurate term by you to see, can I put it in the box and go on to the next play? I didn't think of it in that way, but there is some of that has to go down. As much as that is, there's also like you could also use the word, there's like a real discipline about him, where sometimes we've heard the motivation can be up and down, but like discipline is the day after day things. And he's a really disciplined player as well. Routine, the practice habits, the things to go through. So I would say there's probably the compartmentalized, but there's also a rock solid, disciplined approach that he takes to performing, to practicing, to preparing. And I think some of that leads to the compartmentalized, like, I am ready for this. I've trained, I've put the work in, and I can still think back to Michael Phelps, talking to us in Arizona about the preparation and being ahead. And I was so impressed by him that day when he spoke to the team. I was expecting somebody who was going to be 6'6" with 40-inch arms and like a superhuman, and it was really so much of in between his ears that made him so unique. And I really remember, I could remember it like it was yesterday.
How much of the compartmentalizing did you realize before the draft, and how much of it is seeing it manifest once he got here?
More the manifestation of that, because I imagine you had to go through some of that, but that's other people giving you information. And so that's nice, and the information is important, but it's also one thing to see it for yourself, because the film evaluation, that was a fairly easy part of it. It's all the other things that go into the position that make him unique.
And on the field, why has Jaden had a lot of success, particularly throwing downfield this season?
Well, I think, one, like, he's put a lot of work in with the guys, so there's, things they do early, things they do late, and so Terry's been a big factor in that. But we've worked really hard. He and his teammates have worked really hard at extending plays and remaining passers to go down the field as well. So to me, it does come from the work.
Hey, good afternoon, Coach.
Good afternoon.
You coached against Mike Evans a few times in your career. How has he kind of really stood out to you as a player, and then also his matching the Jerry Rice record last weekend?
Yeah, I think just a remarkable competitor. I think, if I'm not mistaken, when I even coached in college, my first game coaching at Florida might have been against him, and in the SEC, yes. And I've just followed his career. It's not just the length. There's lots of guys that are taller or longer, but it's the competitive will, the routes, the discipline, the competitiveness, all of those things. When you're looking at sustained success, you better have the whole thing, and he certainly does.
And then this will be your first time on one side or the other of the Marshawn Lattimore and Mike Evans rivalry. How can a rivalry like that between two great players impact the flow of the game?
I don't know if it can impact the flow of the game, but there's definitely matchups all over the field that make a difference in winning and losing. And these are two elite competitors, and it's honestly what makes coaching so much fun, and those aren't the only two that are going to be absolutely battling for it. It may be the only ones that the networks may show, but let me tell you, there'll be a lot of guys that are really going to go for it. And that's what it does make that part fun.
Specific with Marshawn, or how many more specific steps do you need to see him make to be able to play Sunday?
He's hitting all the markers in a good space, so we'll have a jog-through practice today, and then we'll be full speed back at it tomorrow. So he's hit all the markers up to this point, and I anticipate that trending through the week. But tomorrow and Friday, specifically tomorrow, will be one that's more speed.
And then 4 months to the day today was the opener in Tampa.
Right on.
How much, if at all, can you take from that long ago in an NFL season?
Well, I think there's things you take. It's a full circle moment. You don't usually get to play somebody at the start of a season, the start of a second season. They absolutely got the best of us on that day. And so it's a good measuring stick to see, how much we've improved. And so they're an excellent team, and clearly on that day showed it.
You've been through the postseason before. As much as you want to make this a normal week, what does change when it comes to the one-and-done factor?
The energy that goes into the week, you can feel it. It's palpable. And so I wanted to make sure, for most of the guys, normalize that you should feel this. And if you don't, that's okay too. It's not like you're, don't have a pulse. But I didn't want any of that to manifest itself into doing anything that's too different. Use it for energy. Use it for the game plan. Use it for something specific that you want to improve on to go. And as it goes through the week, there's a heightened awareness that usually comes in. Let's go back through this again. And it mostly comes from the players, which is a good thing, that the game plan right, get your bodies right, so you can really perform at your best. And you want to do all the preparation you can, Chick. So when you do kick that thing off on Sunday night, man, I put the work in, I'm ready to go get down.
Dan, you've used the phrase, we got to beat these heavy hitters. you have another heavy hitter here in Tampa Bay, and maybe outside these walls and outside the building, many people think you guys are the underdog in this matchup. How do you and maybe your players embrace that mentality of being the underdog, and how can that maybe be dangerous in this type of setting?
But the team has earned this right to go fight, and we're going to fight like hell. When you get into, the postseason, you want to make sure you're playing your best football. And we've worked hard to find those areas of improvement. By no means are we, where we're going to end up in that improvement. But I love what we stand for as a group, and these guys have earned this right to go battle. And I'll leave it at that.
Dan, I know coming in to a new situation, the expectation is we have to make some changes. They were 4-13 last year. Did you anticipate that you would make as many changes to the roster as you all wound up making? And how, I don't know if surprising is the word, but how gratifying is it that the changes you made coalesced quickly?
Yes. I didn't come in with the expectations to know how many, David, to answer the first part of that. But Adam and his staff did a good job of really connecting with the coaches. We spent a lot of time together on what's the style and attitude that we would like to play like. And I thought Adam's superpower is he's been able to find the players for the teams that he's been with, and how he scouted for players at New England that was different than Denver, which was different than San Fran. And coming here, what would make a commander, at corner and safety and linebacker and, running back and quarterback. And so to have, he and his team understand what the coaches were looking for, that's harder than it sounds. And for guys who've been around, I see some nods going on. It just is. And from the outside, you think, well, why is that? But it just is. And so it takes a lot of time together. And so he and I spent a lot of time together. We watched, last night we were back going through our own game, talking through our team, matchups and people. And so it's nice to have somebody, David, to talk to on a regular about team, people, players, and seeing how we could feature them, knowing that we're going to try to put the guys in the positions of things they can do best. And that's not always the easiest thing to do, but that's what we're going to continue to try to do. And I love that the guys who have come in, they're clear on their roles too. And I think that's an important piece when somebody comes in, especially the rookie. They may not even know what that could look like. And I think it's our responsibility as coaches, and Adam and his personnel side, this is where we see you going. It's going to take work, but if you work your ass off, I think this is where you could end up. So many times, and we've all seen it, where somebody's career just doesn't quite take off. And I think sometimes they don't know what the vision is for them. And I think having a vision for what a player can be, young player, older player, the Jeremy Chins, to say, this is how we're going to play you here. And he's really made an impact. A guy like Jeremy, and down by the line of scrimmage, we can blitz him, he can hit, he can guard tight ends. But we were going to make sure that's the role that we want to put you in. And if you can nail that, I think it'll come through good. All right. You guys have a good one.